The Jewish Talmud says, "Whoever destroys a soul of Israel, it is considered as if he destroyed an entire world. And whoever saves a life of Israel, it is considered as if he saved an entire world." During World War II, the Protestant and Catholic Church in Europe and other organizations did very little to rescue the Jews that faced deportation and death in Hitler's concentration camps. There were individual Christians who raised their voices for the Jews across Europe, but the organized churches were mostly silent. The one exception to this was the Bulgarian Orthodox Church, which was the only church in Europe to openly oppose Hitler's final solution for the Jews. Some other small evangelical churches, as well as some in the Catholic community in Bulgaria, also condemned this injustice. But the driving force behind the opposition to the persecution and deportation of the Jews was the Orthodox Church. Bishop Stefan of Sofia and Bishop Kirill of Plovdiv were the most influential and adamant opposition leaders. They literally became the heart and soul of the Bulgarian nation in an unprecedented movement to save the Jews. These two great souls made it their mission to stop this terrible injustice. They adamantly refused to let the Bulgarian government deport the Jews to Treblinka, in Poland, where they would have been killed immediately. Treblinka was the worst place on earth at that time. It was hidden deep in the Polish woods where no one could hear or see what went on there. Over 800,000 people, mostly Jews, were murdered there in a 10-month period in 1943 in what could only be called hell on earth. Bishop Stefan and Bishop Kirill, and the Orthodox Church in Bulgaria, protested vigorously against the law for the protection of the nation, passed in 1941, because it denied all Jews living in Bulgaria the most basic of human rights. Even people like Dimitar Peshev, the deputy speaker of the Bulgarian parliament, who would later fight to save the Jews, voted for this law, not realizing that it would be used to justify the deportation of the Jews. Alexander Belov, the commissioner for the Jewish question, and Captain Theodor Daniker of the German SS, had signed a secret agreement in February 1943 to deport 20,000 Jews. 8,000 from Bulgaria, and 12,000 from Macedonia and Thrace, which were under Bulgarian administrative control, were to be sent to Treblinka. Jewish leaders in Bulgaria received a warning of the impending deportation, and asked Dimitar Peshev, the deputy speaker of the parliament, to help them. He and others confronted Interior Minister Petr Gabrovsky, a Nazi lover and anti-Semite, on March 9, and demanded a cancellation of the order. After Peshev threatened to bring it to the floor of the parliament and cause a national scandal, word came late that night that the order to deport the Jews was being put on hold. The delayed order had not yet reached Plovdiv, and on the following morning 1,600 Jews were being held in a schoolyard near the train station waiting for their deportation to the Treblinka death camp. Earlier in that day, the Metropolitan of the Orthodox Church in Plovdiv, Bishop Kirill, had sent King Boris a one-sentence telegram that said, "In the name of God, have mercy on the Jews." Kirill had already threatened civil disobedience by saying he would lie down on the tracks in front of the trains if the deportation was carried out. Soon after he sent the telegram to the king, Bishop Kirill went to where the Jews were being held and told the police that he wanted to speak. He was told that he couldn't. After being told that he couldn't speak to the people, he climbed over the fence and said to the Jews, "Do not worry, my children, because you are staying here in Bulgaria, and if they send you away, I will go with you on the trains." He quoted from the book of Ruth chapter 1, verse 16, "Wherever you go I will go. Wherever you lodge I will lodge. Your people will be my people, and your God will be my God." At 3 p.m. that afternoon, the order came to release the Jews and set them free. The young and the old ran into the streets shouting, "We have been freed." This was a moment of great victory, but the order to send the Jews to the death camps from Bulgaria was only delayed, not cancelled. The Nazi forces in Bulgaria were still planning to find a way to force King Boris into giving up Bulgaria's Jews to Hitler. Following the delay of the deportation order, Dimitar Payshev and 42 other parliament deputies sent a letter of protest to the Prime Minister Bogdan Filoft and King Boris. They demanded that the order to deport the Jews be cancelled permanently. This greatly angered the Prime Minister and the King, and the order remained in effect. This letter of protest meant political and personal disaster for Payshev. He was stripped of his position in the parliament on March 30th and was never allowed to serve in public life again. During this same month, Bishop Stefan, the head of the Bulgarian Orthodox Church, was on his way to the Rila monastery when he happened upon a train loaded with thousands of people locked inside boxcars. He heard the voices of trapped men, women and children begging for water, food and air. The train quickly disappeared from his view, but the images and the sounds were burned in his mind. This encounter with one of the death trains forever changed Bishop Stefan's life. He had witnessed God's chosen people being treated like animals, and virtually no one in Bulgaria even knew about it but him. Such despicable treatment of the Jews was against everything people like Levski, Botev, Rakovsky and so many other Bulgarian heroes had died for in the fight for freedom of the Bulgarian people. Bulgaria's heroes had laid down their lives for justice and equality in the belief that one day the Bulgarian people would break free from the chains of almost 500 years of slavery under the Ottoman yoke. These great people believed that the Bulgarian nation would become the champions of men everywhere, who believed in freedom and the dignity of man. Bishop Stefan raced to the monastery and immediately sent a telegram to King Boris and begged him to intervene in this tragedy. The king sent Bishop Stefan a very unemotional telegram that said everything possible within the law would be done. Bishop Stefan, broken-hearted, started his journey back to Sofia. On his way he stopped in the small town of Dupnitsa to conduct a service, and he was shocked that the streets were empty. The reason was Bulgarian Jews were under house arrest, waiting to be deported, and the local people refused to leave their homes as a sign of protest against the treatment of their Jewish friends. Bishop Stefan made a telephone call to the Bulgarian Prime Minister demanding that the house arrest orders for the Jews be cancelled. The Prime Minister was so taken by surprise at Stefan's boldness that he immediately lifted the order. The church where Bishop Stefan was conducting the service filled up that day with the Jews of the town. They came to say thank you for saving them and to greet this great man with shalom. Tragically, nothing was done to save the Jews on the train that Bishop Stefan had seen. These were not Bulgarian Jews, and the king said his hands were tied and he could not help them. The train continued on its way to Treblinka, and everyone was dead within hours after they arrived at the camp. The law for the protection of the nation, passed by the Bulgarian parliament and signed by King Boris in January 1941, prevented the granting of Bulgarian citizenship or any form of protection to Jews that were not already Bulgarian citizens. The Jews in the territories under Bulgaria's administrative control in Thrace and Macedonia were now people without a country, and Hitler demanded their deportation. Sadly, the Bulgarians complied and did as they were told. Most historians believe Bulgaria could have done more to save these Jews. The government's disregard for their plight and its participation in sending the Jews to the death camp represents a great stain on the history of Bulgaria that the Bulgarian people do not deserve. The Nazis continued to seek ways to carry out the deportation of Bulgaria's Jews. Alexander Belov and Fyodor Daniker announced a new plan to deport 800 of Sofia's Jews. Bishop Stefan immediately went to the royal palace to see the king. He was told that the king was ill and could not see him. Bishop Stefan told the staff that he would wait in the palace until the king felt well enough to see him. The king saw that Bishop Stefan would not leave, so reluctantly he agreed to meet with him. Bishop Stefan told the king that if he allowed this deportation to occur, he would open the churches and monasteries as a place of sanctuary for the Jews. The king believed that Bishop Stephen would do this, so again he agreed to postpone the deportation. The Jews were saved once again because this good man refused to let them go, but this real-life drama to save the Jews of Bulgaria was far from over. On April the 2nd, Bishop Stephen called a special meeting of the Church Council, and it was agreed upon and confirmed that the Bulgarian Orthodox Church would not support the anti-Jewish laws of the government. On April 15, King Boris invited the Bulgarian bishops to the palace where he tried to persuade them to agree to the deportations. After all, he said, other countries have dealt the same way with the Jewish problem. Again, the Bulgarian church leaders stood firm and refused to go along with the king's request. The bishops continued to demand a cancellation of the anti-Jewish laws and asked that all Jews that had been baptized by the church be recognized as Christians. It was clearly understood by the Bulgarian Orthodox Church and other Christian churches in Bulgaria that these baptisms were acts of mercy, not a change of faith on the part of the Jewish people. It pained the Jews to agree to such things, but they knew this was offered to them in an attempt to save their lives, so they went along with it. These brave men of the Bulgarian Orthodox Church never changed or altered their determination to save the Bulgarian Jews throughout the war. In a 2.5-month period, the church bishops met 8 times on the Jewish question, sent 5 letters to the king, met with the prime minister twice and sent circulars out concerning this to the churches. On May 4, the Bulgarian Holy Synod wrote the government, saying, "Our people, by its soul and conscience, by its mentality and conviction, cannot bear lawlessness, repression and atrocity against anyone. Our human, as well as our Christian conscience is embarrassed." Hence, the Holy Synod is asked spiritedly from many sides, by good and loyal Bulgarian public figures, by well-known people of culture and patriots, by Bulgarian mothers, to insist on justice and a humane attitude for the Jewish minority in the country. Later in May, Alexander Belov, the commissioner for the Jewish question, and SS Captain Daniker presented King Boris with 2 options to deport the Jews. Option A: deport the Jews to the death camps immediately, or Option B: deport them to labor camps in the Bulgarian countryside near the Danube River in the north of the country. King Boris issued an order on May 21 to send the Jews to the labor camps. They were given 14 days to get rid of their property and report for deportation to the Bulgarian countryside. Bishop Stephen continued to write the king and plead with him, "Do not persecute the Jews, so that you, yourself, will not be persecuted. The measure you give will be the measure returned to you. I know that God in heaven is keeping watch over your actions." The Bulgarian people had established May 24 every year as a national holiday that honors the creators of the Bulgarian Cyrillic alphabet. Thousands of students turned out for the event in 1943 at the famed Alexander Nevsky Cathedral. The Bulgarian Council of Ministers, along with the members of the Bulgarian Parliament and church officials, were all there. However, King Boris was nowhere to be found. He was missing and no one knew where to find him. As the head of the Bulgarian Church, Bishop Stephen addressed the large gathering of students and government officials. He told them thousands of people were missing and they were the Jewish students who were forbidden to be there. He promised to ban from the church anyone who persecuted them. The king reappeared after 3 days and told Bishop Stephen that as the king he didn't have the power to change the law to stop the deportations. All able-bodied Jewish men between 18 and 46 were deported to the Bulgarian countryside to labor camps. The deportation of the Jews to death camps never took place. King Boris passed away suddenly in September 1943, and by this time the Germans were losing the war, and the Bulgarian Jews were no longer an urgent matter. Bishop Stephen continued in his position as Metropolitan of Sofia and was elected as the Exarch of the Bulgarian Church after the war. The Communists seized power in Bulgaria in September 1944 and ended the fascist government. He resigned in 1948 from his leadership position in the Bulgarian church, which was by then engaged in a symbiotic relationship with the communists. He thought that he would be allowed to remain the Metropolitan of Sofia, but instead he was arrested and banished to the small village of Banja, near Karlovo. He was kept there in a private villa under house arrest for the next 9 years until he died in 1957. He was never allowed to be a priest again. He was often sick and alone and had no visitors except his immediate family. 95% of the Jews that he had helped save immigrated to Israel. They left because they wanted their own country, but with great gratitude and appreciation for Bishop Stefan and Bishop Kirill and the Bulgarian people. Bishop Kirill was elected as the first patriarch of the restored Bulgarian Church during communist times and became one of the Church's prolific historians. He died March 7, 1971. The Israelis honored Bishop Stefan and Bishop Kirill with the Righteous of the Nations Award in 2001, but their greatest reward was in heaven. Jesus said, "You are good and faithful servants. I left you in charge of only a little, but now I will put you in charge of much more. Come and share in my happiness." We must all thank God that such men as Bishop Stefan and Bishop Kirill ever lived.